This is Indian Country Today.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Trahant. Here are the headlines from Indian Country Today. The confirmation hearings for Representative Deb Haaland begin this week in the U.S. Senate. She's the first Native American to ever go through a confirmation hearing for a cabinet post. And if confirmed by the Senate, she will be the first ever tribal citizen to run a major agency, the Interior Department. There is a lot of history unfolding. Representative Haaland stood with the water protectors at Standing Rock. She has stood with those opposed to oil and gas development in her own home state in New Mexico. And she was once a government witness in a hearing about sacred lands on the U.S. border. It was then she told the Trump administration and the U.S. Border Patrol, "I don't know how you can sleep at night." Haaland is a citizen of Laguna Pueblo. She is 60 years old, and her nomination is already under challenge from Republicans that are supporters of the oil and gas industry. Montana Senator Steve Daines, who came out against Haaland a couple of weeks ago, said she has taken the most radical positions, particularly involving fracking on public lands. The Interior Secretary manages those very public lands. Still, if all Democrats vote together, Haaland will be confirmed. The Haaland nomination is a key indicator about the role of tribal nations in the Biden administration. The Mashpee Wampanoag tribe scored a legal victory last week when the U.S. Department of Interior reversed course on a series of moves designed to end the tribe's reservation status in Massachusetts. A federal judge in 2020 blocked rules posted by the Trump administration, saying the decision was arbitrary, capricious, and an abuse of discretion and contrary to law. In a filing in federal appeals court in Washington, D.C., the Interior Department said it had conferred with the parties and none opposes this motion. Then the judge dismissed the case. The tribe's vice chair, Jesse Little Doe Baird, called it a triumph for the tribe and for ancestors who have fought and died to ensure our land and sovereign rights are respected. The Cape Cod-based tribe was granted more than 300 acres of land in trust in 2015 by then President Barack Obama, a move that carved out the federally protected land needed for the tribe to develop its planned $1 billion First Light Casino, Hotel, and Entertainment Resort. Elders will tell you, make sure to always use your time wisely. Well, that's exactly what staff did at the Hart Butte Public School in Montana. They used the time off during the pandemic to create murals on campus that highlighted individuals who are important to their community. Caitlin Onawa-Boysel has the story.
Last spring on March 14th, the school closed, and for months students stayed home. It was during that time down that an idea started to form.
About deciding to paint these murals in Hart Butte.
I started one mural by myself in a social studies classroom in a high school. And as I completed that mural, as I was working on a mural, I was asked about possible murals outside. And as I thought about it for a long time, I thought I couldn't do it by myself.
And that's when Lewis, still smoking, came into the picture to help with the overall project.
I would say at least 6 drafts that we, kind of look at, try to visualize what they're going to look like.
They visualized and grabbed their paint cans and thought about asking their community who they wanted to see on the murals.
Mike in the school wanted an idea of leaders from the community, our elders from the community. So me and Lewis set out and start looking at old photographs and asking some people in the Hart Butte community in the area about who we should possibly put up there. There were so much suggestions, but we couldn't find certain images of certain people.
But that wasn't the only reason they wanted to highlight these individuals.
And to this day, a lot of the students and staff at the high school are related to these people, are direct descendants from these people that we painted.
After nearly a year of being away, the students returned to school at the start of February. Superintendent Mike Tatsey says they were excited to see the new murals, and he sees the impact the murals are already having on the students.
They would ask who they were. I would tell them, and wow, I'm related to that person. They have the same last name as me, So it did just exactly what we wanted it to be able to have them recognize who they were, and it's unbelievable how life like they really are.
In Wisconsin, Caitlin Anawa Boycell, Indian Country Today.
And those are the headlines from Indian Country Today. I'm Mark Trahant. In this pandemic, people are stepping up to help others. When we come back, we'll meet one woman who left her law practice to create a fund to help tribes in her area. It's been said that being part of a person is helping others, and that's why Ethel Branch stepped up. In fact, none other than Bill Gates called Branch one of the 7 unsung heroes for leadership during the COVID crisis. She is the founder and interim executive director of Ye Haloni Do Navajo Hopi Family Relief Fund, Families COVID Relief Fund. In order to do COVID relief work, she took leave of absence as a member of her law firm, and her GoFundMe page has raised more than $5 million. She is an enrolled Navajo citizen and previously served as the 11th Attorney General of the Navajo Nation. She is a graduate of Harvard Law School, Harvard Kennedy School, and Harvard College. Welcome, Ethel Branch.
Thanks for having me, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we'll have to start by just renaming your organization, so please help me with that.
You did an admirable job. Ye ha'ot nido. It means may our people have fortitude in these times of difficulty.
Well, and strength is really what this is about. How did you come up with the idea?
You know, it just kind of happened. I had been listening to a council session on what to do in response to COVID. There hadn't been a case on Navajo yet, and you know, there wasn't a lot of movement or in the discussion. It was just sort of like, should we do anything? What should we do? At what level should we do it? And that just happened to be right before I went and did my personal shopping to prepare to essentially isolate for 2 weeks, seeing the rise in cases in Arizona. And when I did my personal shopping, you know, literally there were shelves that were barren. And I was also shopping for my mom, and she doesn't have running water or electricity. So some of the non-perishable items she needed just weren't on the shelves. And so that got me extremely concerned about our elders, some of whom have to drive 2 hours just to get to a meaningful grocery store. And was worried that they would come and find these barren shelves, not get the things that they needed, have to go searching and increase risk of exposure in that process. And in the end, maybe not end up with all of what they needed, and being on fixed incomes, not being able to come back again for quite some time. So it was really bothersome. And so the next day, I didn't really sleep well that evening thinking about that. And then the next day did an exploratory post on Facebook. It was like, would anybody be interested in helping contribute to, you know, a fund where we would buy the stuff people need in Flagstaff and people could pick up here instead of going to the grocery stores, or we would get the stuff out to them. And I got a real positive response from all over the country. And so went ahead and formed a GoFundMe site. And by the end of the day, we'd raised $5,000. And by the 4th day, we'd raised over $100,000. And so, you know, it's sort of like, okay, even with the 5,000 in one day, that was way more than I thought I'd raised total. So I immediately reached out to some really amazing Navajo and Hopi women leaders who I knew were close to their communities and would know, you know, who has the real need, and where do we best place these resources. And so that's kind of how we started. Our 2nd day, we started shopping, and our 3rd day, we did our first distribution, actually.
That's remarkable. It's interesting because it actually raises the issue of the limits of government. You did this on your own, and I was really struck by a phrase you just used about women leaders. This is a really organic in that sense too.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. You know, I just knew, like, these are people who are going to get things done quickly, right? And true to to that assumption, the second day, Vanessa was like, okay, I'm out shopping. And then the rest of us were like, oh gosh, we better go shopping too. Because we just didn't know whether the supply chain would be able to withstand the increased demand at that time with everyone stockpiling.
Of course, a disease doesn't respect geographic boundaries. So how did it become a Navajo Hopi project? And how does that change the narrative?
Sure, absolutely. Well, my partner is Hopi and my son is half Hopi. And so, that after I went shopping, we were discussing this issue and the need for the same needs that exist on Hopi that exist on Navajo, and the same, severe food desert conditions. And so we wanted to, make it for all of our relatives. That just worked beautifully. So some of the first women I reached out to were Hopi, and there was a lot of excitement within our group about having it be a joint Navajo and Hopi effort because people are so tired of the division between the two tribes. And many of us were raised, with stories of cooperation. Like my mom taught me that, why Hopi is located in the center of Navajo is because we were their protectors. And our family had huge farms, and we would, bring our farm goods up to Hopi and mutton and do trading. And so there was this really beautiful reciprocal relationship. And many of the folks on my team have similar stories as well.
I'm also struck by kind of the practicality of what you're doing. Maybe talk about just day in and day out, what you're delivering to people.
Sure. Well, we seek to provide 2 weeks worth of food, water, and PPE in our kinship care package program. And that's kind of, that's our flagship program. That's what we started with. And the reason why we want to provide 2 weeks worth of food is because that's a meaningful period of time for people to stay home. It's the period of time, if they're in quarantine, the symptom cycle can run its course, even if they don't realize they have COVID. If they're asymptomatic, then if they really do stay home for that period of time, it helps flatten the curve in the community. And then, of course, we also have we launched this new program in November to just get as much PPE in our community as possible, knowing that we were going into the cold and flu season. We didn't know what that would bring and how fraught the situation would become, and then also the holidays and increased risk of contact and exposure. And so that program's been in place for about 13 weeks, and we've been able to provide 58,000, almost 60,000 adults with these PPE packages. And that includes Clorox wipes, 50 of the 3-ply masks, and an 8-ounce bottle of hand sanitizer. And our food boxes include the same PPE equipment as well as a disinfectant spray. So we're just, trying to equip as many people in our community as possible with the things they need to protect themselves.
Information is also a key part of what you're doing, including posters and comic books. How does that help people, and what's the messaging there?
Sure. Well, public health was always something that we wanted to focus on because, there are only so many people. There's only so much supply that we can be moving, and we are moving huge volumes. Every week it's $100,000 to $200,000 worth of food, water, and PPE that we're getting into our communities, anywhere from 10 to 20 communities. And at this point, we've served about 68,000 households, which is about 270,000 individuals. But with the public health piece, it's like we're not going to be able to get to everyone all at once with the actual supplies, but with public health and information, you can change behavior. You can prompt people to seek the things that they need themselves directly, like the hand sanitizer, the frequent hand washing practices. And then, of course, we are putting the supply in the community, but there is a particular technique for applying hand sanitizer, even washing your hands to be effective. And the same thing goes for the type of mask that you're wearing. And so we wanted to make sure that people had the information they needed to be able to use those things properly and effectively. And so we run these one-page ads in the Navajo Times and Navajo and Hopi Observer. They're in English and Navajo, and then we've also developed some Hopi curriculum. So we have those running right now in English, but we're having them translated into Hopi. And people seem to be responding really well to them. I mean, the characters are Navajo and Hopi. The context is our communities, and it's kind of a graphic novel style. So it appeals to older people as well as our kids. And as you know, kids are such a great source of enforcement with these sorts of things, because they're like, hey, you didn't wash your hands for 20 seconds. So yeah, that's really, really important to us, is making sure that people are changing their behaviors.
Are there lessons going forward from this beyond COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most important lessons is just that lesson of empowerment. You know, in Navajo teachings, there's a philosophy of Twa Ajit Ego, which is sort of, you know, like self-determination, as well as, and, you know, that's balanced by Ke, you know, that sense of kinship. And so what we've been able to do is really reawaken that in our communities. People realize that, you know, like we're not a government, we're just people. And we step forward and we're able to make this huge difference in our community. And this is, you know, prompted a bunch of other smaller groups that are really focused on their local community level. And we work in collaboration with them, but it's been really eye-opening for people to be like, hey, I don't have to just sit back and wait for the government to act, whether that's the Navajo Nation government or the Hopi tribe, or, you know, the federal government or the state government. And that's really, you know, going back to how things used to be in our communities. We didn't have a government to respond. It was, you know, our clans and our families, our local communities. And so it's been really beautiful to see that reawakening. And sort of that message of hope for the future, not just in the face of COVID, but all of the many challenges that our communities face at the local level. So people now realize that, you know, they can make a difference, and, you know, they can step forward and tackle these challenges at the local level.
Thank you, Ethel Branch, for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
When we come back, we'll have a preview of the midwinter session of the National Congress of American Indians. The National Congress of American Indians is in session this week, and once again, it's a virtual conference. Lycia Maddocks joins us now to give us a few highlights. She is the Vice President of External Affairs at Ncai. Welcome, Lycia.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, it's a really exciting week for us, especially with all of the new announcements with, you know, the relationships between the new administration and Indian country. And so we are so delighted that we're issuing and starting off this week with the 19th State of Indian Nations address, where President Sharp will deliver the goals and the outlines of Indian country. She'll talk about the opportunities for success and advancement of Native people. She'll talk about the priorities for our nation-to-nation relationship with the United States. And so that's really exciting. We'll have a congressional response from Alaska Senator Lycia Maddocks today. And then right now, we're in the middle of the beginnings of the task force meetings. And so those are happening now. But yeah, it's going to be a really exciting week. It's a 5-day event for tribal leaders and administrators and anyone, all of our membership that want to join. We have more than 20 speakers from the White House, government agencies, and Congress. This includes Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. We have Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. We also have Senator Lycia Maddocks coming to speak on one of the roundtables, Congressman Raul Grijalva. We also have Dr. Anthony Fauci giving an update on COVID. And we have a couple of other members that were just appointed to the administration. So sessions begin this afternoon. It will be all virtual. And we're just, highlighting the key issues facing Indian country right now, and just providing an opportunity to help develop the solutions through legislative and policy with the 117th Congress.
What are the challenges for tribal leaders trying to get word out in this kind of environment?
Sure. So I think everyone knows the digital divide is real, and that's been one of the biggest challenges for virtual meetings sessions. But, we are resilient. Indian country is resilient, and we found ways to make sure that tribal leaders remain engaged throughout this process. And so I think that, this virtual environment has actually opened up an opportunity for more tribal leaders and administrators to join, because it's not place bound. You can be anywhere and join any of these sessions. And so however it is that that's possible, the Ncai events team has made sure to kind of think of all of those different types of solutions so that we can invite people into the conversation.
A new administration is always an exciting time, and especially for tribal leaders that want to shape policy. How does the discourse in the Congress get to the other Congress?
Sure. So I think that is all about relationship building and tribal leader involvement. NCAI is a tribal leader driven organization. And so tribal leaders' voices at the table to state what those priorities are of the utmost importance. And so we started to lay those foundations at our annual meeting in November. And so we're walking into these conversations with Indian country's priorities, and we want to make sure that we have all of the right people at the table. We're inviting all of the newly appointed officials to understand the baseline of what these priorities are, and really having substantive transactional conversations about how to make that happen. And so, we've had a lot of really great success up to this point. We've had lots of tribal leader engagement, and I think we're ready for a new day here.
One of the things I've always found fascinating about the state of Indian nations is that it's both practical and aspirational. This is true of the budget too. We're talking about aspirational things that have kind of been waiting for a while.
That's right. Indian country has been disproportionately impacted by COVID, as we have seen, and a lot of that has to do with the chronic underfunding of Indian country in general. And so, to your point, the budget is going to be a hallmark point of the conversations this week, and really trying to figure out what it takes to meet those trust and treaty obligations. And a lot of that has to do with making sure that Indian country is properly funded.
I've been wondering about all organizations and how, when we get past the COVID pandemic, how they're being reshaped by all this. Are you starting to see any signs of that?
Absolutely. I think that this just opened up a door for everyone to figure out a new mode of operation. Being in this pandemic has made us stand still and run faster all at the same time. And with all of the new advancements in technology, it's giving us the opportunity to use those types of resources, engage with each other the way that we have never engaged before. And for Indian country to be united, taking these opportunities to navigate this environment in a different way will really bring a lot of unity and help us to have one voice, which will hopefully bring about good, big change.
I think one thing that people don't know about the National Congress of American Indians is that it's not just a leadership organization, that individuals can join as well and participate in the process. Maybe tell folks how to get involved.
Yes, absolutely. We are a member-driven organization, and there are several different tiers of membership. And so we have individual Indian memberships, we have non-native memberships, we have tribal memberships. So if you visit ncai.org and click on our membership tab, you'll be able to find which membership is right for you. And it's very low cost for an opportunity to make big impact.
We have less than a minute left. What excites you about this week?
It's exciting when Indian country can come together to advance some of the most key goals. You know, we knew that in 2020, Indian country had the opportunity to be visible and to be heard. And in 2021, with a brand new administration and a brand new day, we have the opportunity to make that happen. So I invite everyone to join us this week, whether it's to participate in the task forces around an issue area that means the most to you and your tribal nation, or whether it's to listen in on, what the new administration and Congress has in store and what they're working on for Indian country. And so you can find our event information on social media at NCAI 1944 on all platforms, or you can visit our website, ncai.org/events, and find out all of the details you need to know about joining us this week.
Thank you, Lycia Maddocks, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Yaha.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world today. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with another edition tomorrow. I'm Mark Trahant.
Indian Country Today is recorded at the Phoenix Indian School Visitor Center in Phoenix, Arizona.
This is Indian Country Today.